I always thought the worst thing you could find in a forest was a body. Turns out, the worst thing is finding one the world insists doesn't exist. And being told it didn't die the way it very clearly did. October 12th, 2011, Merrill Ridge State Forest, Northern Washington. Late afternoon. Fog rolling in, low, thick as smoke. I was hiking alone along an unofficial trail the tourists never see. Not because I like the scenery, because bodies roll downhill. My name is Daniel, Cole County coroner, former search and rescue medic. 17 years of finding people in places no one should die. Cliffs, creeks, trunks of rusted cars at the bottom of ravines. If there's one thing I trust, it's gravity. Gravity tells you how a story really ended. I was following gravity that day. A missing hiker. 3 days overdue. 32 years old, male, well-equipped, experienced. Probably just turned his phone off, the sheriff had said. People do that. But I'd seen too many probablys end in body bags. So I took my old SAR pack out of the garage, drove to the trailhead, and started walking. The air smelled wrong. Not like pine and wet earth, like metal, like a hardware store aisle after someone's been grinding steel. There was a faint hum in the distance, not loud, not obvious. Just low enough that my teeth noticed before my ears did. I checked my phone. No service. Not unusual out here. But the battery indicator ticked down 5% in 1 minute. That was unusual. I told myself it was the cold, or a bad update, or anything except what my gut said. Something was interfering. 2 hours in. The trail thinned. Branches clawed at my jacket. Dry leaves whispered under my boots. I scanned the slopes like I always do. Look for broken branches, displaced rocks, discoloration. Anything that screams, something heavy came through here. That's when I saw it. A piece of bright orange fabric, caught on a low branch. Jacket material, synthetic, ripped clean through. I stepped closer. The tear line was strange, not frayed, not torn by rock. Cut, clean, like it had met a blade. I tucked it into my pocket, kept moving downhill. The forest went quieter the further I went. No birds, no insects. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I told myself it was just the density of the trees, but I knew better. Forests don't go silent unless something big is listening. Or something big just happened. The smell hit me before. The sight did rot. Wet fur. Coppery blood that had been there long enough to cool, but not long enough to dry. I slipped around a mossy boulder, and the world narrowed. He was hanging from a tree. At first, my brain thought, elk. Then, bear. Then, no, that's wrong. The body was too upright, too humanoid, too deliberate, a massive shape suspended from a thick cable looped over a high branch, not a rope, not vine. Industrial cable, the kind you see on logging rigs. It was dug deep into the neck. The head slumped forward, arms dangling, feet a good 3 feet off the ground. I stopped moving. For a moment, everything in me refused to update. Like my mind was still trying to overlay human proportions onto what I was seeing. It didn't fit. It refused to fit. The body was at least 8 feet tall, shoulders wider than any man I'd ever seen. Coarse, dark hair covered nearly every inch. Thick, matted, clumped with mud and old blood. But in the gaps, skin. Not hide, not scales, skin. Too human, too wrong. My first coherent thought was not scientific or professional. It was, oh hell, someone actually did it. Someone killed a Bigfoot. The word sat in my head like a bad joke. Bigfoot. Sasquatch, the thing drunk hunters point at in blurry photos. The thing bored teenagers leave fake tracks of in the mud to scare tourists. I never believed in it. I believed in exposure, in blunt force trauma, in hypothermia. I'd filled out too many actual death certificates to care about campfire stories. But this was hanging right in front of me. Literally, it wasn't a costume. I moved closer, slowly. Every step deliberate. I've seen bodies staged before. Gang dump sites, insurance fraud scenes, but there are tells to fakes. Costumes never sit right against gravity. Masks slip, proportions are off. This thing was heavy in a way you can't fake. The cable creaked under the load. Flies buzzed near the open mouth. The tongue lolled out, swollen and dark. I could see where the blood had pooled under the skin of the feet before stiffening. Real, not movie real. Physically, nauseatingly real. Jesus, I whispered. My voice sounded small. What the hell happened to you? The neck told the first story. I stepped around to the side. The cable dug into the flesh at an angle. Not the typical ligature mark you see in suicides. Suicides leave a V-shaped pattern, pressure highest at the front. This mark was nearly horizontal, more like a hoist than a noose. I felt my brain switch gears automatically. From human disbelief to professional assessment, I forgot the fur, forgot the myths. I saw a body. And a scene that didn't match the label my brain had slapped on it. He didn't climb up and jump. He was lifted, hoisted, hung. My mouth went dry. That's not suicide, I said out loud. Saying it made it real. The forest did not react. No dramatic thunder. No cinematic owl screech. Just me. A dead thing. And a silence thick enough to choke on. I circled the tree, looking for drag marks. Boot prints. Tire tracks. Anything. The soil beneath him was disturbed, but not like someone had stood there and kicked around. More like something heavy had been swinging for a while, grinding the top layer of leaf litter into a smooth, dark patch. I craned my neck and squinted upward. The branch he hung from was at least 30 feet up. Thick, sturdy, no broken limbs nearby, no rope burns on the trunk from someone climbing up with gear. So how do you get a cable over a branch that high with no sign of climbing? Helicopter? Grappling rig? Preset hardware? My skin crawled. Whatever did this had done it clean, carefully. Like hanging 8-foot bodies from trees was routine. I took a step closer than I should have. The smell was worse up close. Sweet rot under the metallic tang. I forced myself to study the face, because that's where you find the humanity, or the lack of it. The jaw was broad covered in hair that thinned out near the lips. The lips themselves were cracked, bluish. Behind them, teeth. Not all human. Canines larger, flattened molars like a herbivore. But the arrangement was too familiar. I could have done a dental chart on it. The eyes were the worst. They were half open, clouded over. But the socket shape, the brow ridge, the angle, if you shaved it and shrank it by half, you'd call it a man. A very ugly, very unlucky man. A breeze rolled through the trees and set the body swaying slightly. The cable creaked. The head lolled. And for a split second, just a split second, I had the sickening impression that it was going to open its eyes and look at me. I stepped back so fast, I nearly fell. My boots slipped on damp leaves. I grabbed the trunk to steady myself. Bark scraped my palm through the glove. "Okay," I muttered. "Okay, Danny. Breathe." I pulled my phone out. No signal, of course. But the camera still worked. I took photos. Wide, close. Details of the ligature marks, the hands, the feet, the branch, the surrounding ground. My hands shook so badly a few shots blurred. I didn't delete them. Blurry evidence was still evidence. I also did something I wasn't supposed to do. I filmed a short video, a slow pan from the feet up to the head, narrating quietly like I was at a crime scene. Unidentified large hominid-like specimen, I heard myself say. Hanging from industrial cable. Apparent suspension. Not self-inflicted. No obvious support structures for self-suspension. Scene suggests staging. It sounded ridiculous and clinical at the same time, like a drunk cryptid hunter had possessed a medical examiner. When I finished, I finally did what I should have done. First, I called it in. The call dropped twice. The third time, it went through. Barely. "Cole here," I said. "Patch me to Sheriff Dawson. Now." Static. A click. "Dawson." His voice was faint, like he was underwater. "Sheriff, it's Cole. I found something." "Did you find our hiker?" "Not exactly." I swallowed, chose my words carefully. "There's a body." "Male?" "Probably. Large, suspended from a tree. I need backup, documentation, and, honestly, I need you to see this yourself." There was a long pause. "You think it's foul play?" I looked up at the cable biting into that impossible neck. "At minimum, it's not a suicide." "Text me your coordinates," he said. "I'll bring a team." The line crackled out. Dead. I texted. Anyway, pinned my location. Sent it. Watched the spinning circle fail to resolve. No confirmation. No. Delivered. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then slid the phone back in my pocket with a curse. For the next 40 minutes, it was just me and the hanging impossible. I talked to it. That's the part I don't put in official reports. You spend enough time around the dead, you start talking to them. Helps keep your own head straight. "So," I said quietly, "who did this to you?" The body swayed. A drop of something dark fell from one of its fingers and landed near my boot. I watched it soak into the leaves. "I don't think you wanted to go like this," I added. It helped somehow to assume it had been capable of wanting anything at all. The first crow arrived 20 minutes later. It landed on a branch above us, tilted its head. Watched. Didn't call out. Didn't hop closer, just stared, like it was waiting to see who owned the body. I was still waiting when I heard the engines. Faint at first, then closer. Multiple vehicles on the access road above the ravine. I felt a wash of relief. Then unease. Those weren't county trucks. Too smooth, too heavy, too synchronized. I climbed back up toward the sound, leaves slid under my boots. I grabbed roots, trunks, anything to pull myself up faster. By the time I reached the narrow dirt road, 3 black SUVs were already parked bumper to bumper. No logos, tinted windows. Engines still ticking. Sheriff Dawson's truck was nowhere in sight. All 3 rear doors opened at once. Men and women stepped out. Dark jackets, badges on lanyards. It took me a second to register the letters. FBI. For half a heartbeat, I felt stupidly reassured. Federal help. Serious resources. Then the lead agent looked at me, and every bit of that comfort died. His eyes were wrong, not alien, not glowing, just tired in a way I'd only seen on soldiers. People who've watched too many things break that weren't supposed to. He walked over with a practiced, measured stride. "Dr. Cole?" "Yeah." I wiped my palm on my pants before shaking his hand. It was a reflex, pointless and polite. "Special Agent Mercer," he said. No smile. No wasted words. "You made quite a call." "I called the sheriff," I said. "Not the bureau." "The sheriff called us," he replied. "But we got here first." Something cold slipped down my spine. "How did you get here faster than a man who lives 10 minutes from the ranger station?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he asked, "Where is it?" Not, "Where is the victim?" Not, "Where is the body?" Just, "It." I should have lied, but I didn't. Because at that point, I still thought this was about a crime scene. Still thought protocol mattered. I pointed down toward the ravine. "About 200 yards downslope. You'll smell it before you see it." He nodded once, turned to his team. "All right. Evidence Protocol Gamma. No locals beyond the perimeter. No civilian photography. Dr. Cole, you'll accompany us as the locating party then remain topside for debrief. Hold on, I said. I'm the county coroner. This is my jurisdiction. Not anymore, he said, flat, final, like he'd said that same line 100 times in other forests. I felt my temper stir. This is a suspicious death in my county, Agent. If you want to take over, fine. But you don't get to cut me out. He watched me for a moment, measured, evaluating. You're going to want to rethink how much you want to be in this, he said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It was worse. It was advice. I thought about walking away for about 3 seconds. Then I remembered the cable biting into that thing's neck, the way gravity had been ignored, the way the forest had gone silent. No, I said, my voice surprised even me. I'm seeing this through. He exhaled. A ghost of something like regret crossed his face. Fine, he said. Then let's go meet your find. We went down together. Their team moved like they'd rehearsed this terrain. Careful, efficient, equipment that wasn't off-the-shelf SAR gear. I noticed small details, custom harnesses, non-standard radios. One of them carried a case the size and shape of a portable generator. No one slipped, no one stumbled. Like they'd done this descent a dozen times in a dozen different woods. The smell hit them too. Even the most stone-faced agent flinched slightly when the rot scent rolled up. We stepped around the last boulder, and there it was, hanging, huge, undeniable. The agents did not gasp. They did not swear. They did not exchange looks of disbelief. They just clicked into a different gear, like the sight confirmed something they already knew. Subject is intact, one of them said into a mic. No visible predation. Suspension on artificial line. Neck distortion consistent with post-mortem hoisting. Post-mortem. The word stuck to my ribs. So you already know it didn't hang itself, I said. Mercer glanced at me. We knew that before we saw it. How? He didn't answer. Instead, he spoke into his own mic. Control, this is Mercer. Asset located. Condition expired. Requesting confirmation on retrieval protocol. There was static, a crackle, a voice I couldn't make out. He listened, nodded once. Copy, he said. Protocol Delta. No external media. No local retention. I didn't like the sound of that. What does that mean? I asked. He turned back to the body. It means, Dr. Cole, he said, that whatever you think you found out here today, you didn't. I stared up at the hanging giant, at the cable, at the horizontal ligature, at the impossible proportions that were suddenly being treated like routine cleanup. If this isn't a suicide, I said slowly, and it's clearly not an accident, then what is it? Mercer looked at me with those dead tired eyes. An error, he said, on our part. He let that sit, then added, and errors get corrected. I felt my phone vibrate. In my pocket, I pulled it out on instinct. No signal, no notification. Just a black screen flickering for a moment, like it had tried to boot something and failed. When I looked back up, one of the agents was already climbing the tree with gear I didn't recognize. Another was unpacking the generator-shaped case. Mercer stepped closer to me, lowered his voice. This wasn't suicide, he said. You're right about that. His eyes shifted back to the body. But don't make the mistake of thinking that means it wanted to live. Things like him, he added softly, don't get to decide how they die. He patted my shoulder once, almost kindly. Now let's talk about what you're going to put in your report. Continue. The story can't realistically reach 20,000 words in this interface, so this continues the same scene-by-scene style and gives you a solid next act you can keep extending in your editor. You can treat this as the full ****, Act 2 morgue plus first cover-up clash asterisk asterisk, and then mirror the structure of your original Bigfoot script to grow it to full length. 1, 2. Number continuation. Act 2. The morgue, they took the body, but not my eyes. They winched him up like freight, cut the cable from the branch, lowered him onto a reinforced stretcher I'd never seen before. Everything about the process said, "We've done this." Often, Agent Mercer had me stand back for safety, which really meant, don't get in the way. By the time we got back up to the road, the sun was bleeding into the trees, fog thicker, the forest behind us already swallowing the empty space where he'd hung. They slid the stretcher into the back of the last SUV. I expected them to shut the door and drive away. Instead, Mercer turned to me. "You're coming with us, Dr. Cole." "Where?" "Your office." He said it like he owned the deed. The county morgue was a basement, not a facility. Merrill County didn't have chrome hallways and keycard doors. We had one autopsy room, one cooler, one aging ventilator that sounded like it had emphysema. I unlocked the side door with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. Agents flowed in behind me like water. 2 peeled off toward my office. 1 toward the records room, like they'd gotten the floor plan faxed from God. I stood in the autopsy suite and watched them roll him in. The ceiling lights were harsh, too bright for a body that belonged in the dark. They parked the stretcher beside my table. Metal legs squeaked. The room smelled like bleach. And underneath that, forest rot, wet fur, old blood. "Why here?" I asked. "You have the legal authority to certify a death in this county," Mercer said. "And we need that on paper. You want me to do an exam?" "Limited." He nodded to a woman in a dark blazer. "Agent Ruiz will oversee evidence control. You will not remove any tissue without clearance. You will not photograph, record, or transmit anything electronically. You will not contact anyone until we're done." "That's not how this works," I said. "That's exactly how this works today," Ruiz said. She was younger than Mercer, sharper. Every movement precise. She had the eyes of someone who has already clocked every exit and weapon in the room. I looked at the covered shape on the stretcher. The sheet was laughable. It barely draped over the contours. There was no zipper, no body bag big enough. A ridiculous part of me thought I should have ordered a special one for giants. "For the record," I said, "I don't perform exams with federal guns in the room." Mercer's jaw flexed once. Then he flicked 2 fingers. The agents nearest the door holstered their weapons, stepped back. Still present. Still watching. Just slightly less overtly threatening. "Better?" he asked. "No," I said. "But closer." I pulled on gloves. The vinyl snapped around my wrists. Familiar. Grounding. I'd lost count of how many bodies I'd opened under these lights. There's something humbling about how similar everyone looks, stripped down to bone and organ. That was the belief that got me through the bad ones. We're all made of the same fragile parts. Until today. "Ready when you are, Doctor," Ruiz said. Her voice had zero curiosity in it. This was a formality for her, a box to check. I gripped the sheet. For a second, I couldn't move. Not because of fear. Because of the feeling that once I saw him under bright light, there would be no putting the world back. Then I pulled. The sheet slid away. The giant looked smaller lying down, not small, never small, but less mythic, more clinical. His chest was a broad plain of dark hair, clumped with dried mud and congealed blood. His arms lay at his sides, hands half curled, fingers longer than mine by half. Palm pads thickened, like he'd spent a lifetime walking on his knuckles. But it was the neck that drew my eye. The ligature furrowed into the flesh like a pale, hairless band. Wide, almost perfectly horizontal. 3, 4. I stepped closer. No parchmentization. No dry, leathery ridge the way you see when people hang themselves and gravity does the work slowly. 4-3. This was soft, wet, bruised, deep under the skin. Describe what you see, Ruiz said. Horizontal ligature mark, I said. At or just below the thyroid level. No classic V shape. No upward angle toward the back of the head. No evidence of prolonged suspension. More consistent with hoisting or strangulation than suicidal hanging. 3-4. Conclusion? Not self-inflicted. She tapped something into her tablet. Thank you. The words left a bitter taste. I moved to the face. Close up, the dimples of hair follicles, the pores, the cracked lips, all of it screamed times living thing times more than times monster. Asterisk, I eased one eyelid open with my thumb. The sclera was bloodshot. Fine petechiae dotted the surface. Burst capillaries from pressure. I need to check the airway, I said. External only, Ruiz replied. For now. I took a tongue depressor. Anyway, old habits. I pried the jaw open. The tongue was swollen, cyanotic. Back of the throat showed tiny hemorrhages. Classic signs of strangulation. Human or not, physiology didn't care. 4. I prepped for a incision. Ruiz's voice cut in. No thoracic cavity entry until clearance. That's not how Mercer stepped between us. Neck and surface exam will be sufficient for cause of death, he said. You're not here to explore. I left the scalpel on the tray. Then why bring him here at all, I asked. You could have zipped him into a container and vanished. Mercer studied me for a moment. Because a county coroner saying not suicide looks better on paper than us saying nothing, he said. You still care what it looks like? Some people do. He didn't specify which people. I moved down to the hands' palms up first. Thick pads, short, blunt nails, the kind you get on climbers and manual laborers. I looked for defensive wounds, scratches, skin under the nails, nothing obvious. But on the left wrist, under the hair, a faint circular scar, smooth, perfectly round, like something had been set into the flesh and later removed. Tag that, Ruiz said immediately. Before I even pointed, it's an old surgical site. Noted. I glanced up at Mercer. How many of these have you seen? He didn't answer right away. The silence was loud. Enough, he said at last. And they all end up in trees? Not all. His jaw tightened. Some don't make it that far. The room felt smaller. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. I took a step back. The cause of death is asphyxia secondary to ligature compression of the neck, I said slowly. Orientation and characteristics of the mark are inconsistent with suicidal hanging and consistent with external hoisting or strangulation by a mechanical device. 3-4. In English, Ruiz said. Somebody killed him, I said, and then someone hung him up like art. Mercer's eyes flicked to mine. For a second, we were just two men in a cold room with something neither of us asked for between us. That's your official opinion? He asked. Yes. Good. He nodded to Ruiz. You have what you need. We'll be taking custody of the remains now. Hold on, I said. That's not how chain of custody. Dr. Cole, Ruiz cut in. We're not arguing jurisdiction today. 5, 6, your role is to sign off on the mechanism. We handle everything else. I still need to. You're done. Her tone left no room. Mercer softened it. With words, not with truth. You did your job, he said. Better than most people would have, honestly. Go home. Write your report. Keep it simple. Don't speculate in writing about what times he was. Unidentified male, I said bitterly. If that makes you feel better, he replied. Use whatever word lets you sleep. I almost laughed. Sleep, I said. Sure. They brought in their own body bag? It wasn't a bag, really. More like a flexible shell. Dark, reinforced. With built-in clamps that locked around the gurney rails. When they zipped it, the sound was too loud. Final. Something in my chest protested. This isn't right. Ruiz paused. Which part? The part where you erase him. She considered that. We're not erasing him, doctor, she said quietly. We're putting him back where he was supposed to be. Dead in a tree. Contained, she said. The word hung in the air like a second body contained. Not buried, not honored, managed. That wasn't a suicide scene, I said. I want that on record. And it will be, Mercer replied. In a file you'll never see again. They wheeled him out. I watched the black shell disappear through my double doors. The sound of the gurney wheels faded down the hall. When it was gone, the room felt wrong. Like a theater after the actors have left. Props still there. No story. Ruiz stayed behind. She closed the door gently, clicked the latch herself, then rested her palms on the metal. For a second, her shoulders slumped. Just a fraction. When you go home, she said without turning around, you're going to be tempted to look up certain things, call certain people, send certain files to yourself. That's an interesting prediction, I said. It's not a prediction, she replied. It's a pattern. She turned, met my eyes. We're very good at patterns. Is that a threat? A warning. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint line of an old scar at her hairline. Do you have kids, Dr. Cole? Yes. The lie was automatic, I don't. Just an ex-wife and a mortgage. But she didn't need to know that. Her gaze searched my face, weighing, measuring. Then, you understand stakes, she said. Some things are bigger than one body and one forest. Bigger than murder? Yes. She didn't flinch. And if I disagree, then you'll find out the hard way that curiosity shortens life. The phrase landed like déjà vu. Somewhere in my memory, in someone else's story, those words had been written on a note. I didn't know that yet. But my skin prickled like fate had just repeated itself. She left without another word. The door clicked. The room hummed. I was alone again. Me, the empty table, the faint indentation where his weight had been, and the echo of his impossibly human face. I stripped my gloves off slowly. They stuck to my skin. Sweat had pooled in the fingers. I tossed them into the biohazard bin. Missed. They hit the floor. I left them there. The stainless steel counter reflected a warped version of my face. Pale. Eyes bloodshot. Jaw clenched too tight. Okay, I whispered to my reflection. What now? The answer should have been, go home. Write the clean report. Use their language. Pretend the world hadn't tilted. But the problem with being a coroner is this. You don't get to pretend about facts. Not for long. My hands moved before my brain did. I went to the small side sink, turned on the tap, rinsed my hands, then looked at my nails. There, under the index of my left hand. A tiny, dark smear. I remembered grabbing the tree, the cable, maybe even brushing against his skin when we shifted him. I reached for a microscope slide, not protocol, not part of any official chain, but it was there. In me, on me. I scraped the material from under my nail onto the glass, clear lid on top. Marked it with a Sharpie. M. Ridge, 10/12S. I slipped it into my pocket. The weight was nothing. The decision was everything. They took his body. But they didn't take all of him. Not yet. Continue. The lab should have been the safest place in my world. It wasn't anymore. It felt like the last room I should be in, and the only place I had a chance of understanding what I'd just seen. Number, back in the empty morgue. For an hour after they left, I pretended to be normal. I typed the basic report. Date, location, unidentified male approximately 8 feet in height, recovered from Merrill Ridge State Forest. Every time I went to type Bigfoot, my fingers froze. Not because the word was ridiculous, because it suddenly wasn't. I kept the report clinical. Ligature description, neck findings, strangulation markers, suggested manner of death, homicide, not suicide, not accident, homicide. I saved it to the county system, printed a copy, stamped it, filed the hard copy in the steel cabinet behind my desk, and only then let myself think about the slide in my pocket. The slide felt heavier than it was. I locked the office door, closed the blinds, walked back into the autopsy room, and turned only one overhead light on. The rest of the space dropped into soft shadow. It felt less like I was sneaking around that way, more like I was in a confession booth. We had an old lab scope on a side counter. Nothing fancy. Basic light microscope. Enough for tissue checks, not enough for real forensic work. 1. I cleaned the stage, set the slide down, labeled edge facing me. M-Ridge 10/12, S1. My throat tightened. It looked like any other smear of organic material, nothing mythic about it. I sat, adjusted the eyepieces, brought the lens down until it nearly touched glass, then eased the focus knob. The blur sharpened. Cells came into view. At first, it was reassuring. Nuclei, membranes, a familiar galaxy of shapes and shadows. Okay, I murmured. Just tissue. Except, not just. At low magnification, it looked like muscle tissue. Fibers, striations. But between them, smaller structures, too regular to be artifacts. Almost like fine wires. No, that was my brain, trying to turn biology into machinery. I changed magnification, refocused. The fibers snapped into new clarity. They weren't wires. They were branching, somewhere between nerve and plant root. Their walls had a double outline I didn't recognize from any human samples I'd ever seen. The hair on my arms lifted. I shifted the slide. Near the edge, there was a clump of cells more like skin scrapings. Easier to compare. The top layer looked human enough. Keratin, flat squamous cells. But the deeper you went, the less familiar it got. The basal layer had additional inclusions. Dark, oval bodies. Not melanin. Wrong shape. Wrong distribution. I'd looked at enough slides in my career to know when my eyes were lying. These weren't. I need a stain, I muttered. We had a basic H&E kit, nothing exotic. I lifted the slide. Stained, rinsed, dried, hands on autopilot. Back under the scope, the picture deepened. The nuclei took on a familiar blue, cytoplasm pink. The extras stayed dark, like they didn't want to take the color. It was subtle. If I didn't know what I was looking at, I'd have missed it. Whatever this was, it wasn't just human. It was close enough. To hurt about 99.9% of DNA between two humans is the same, too. That's one of those trivia facts you pick up at conferences and forget until it's relevant. This felt like the opposite. Everything was close enough to scream, same, and just wrong enough to whisper, not quite. I sat back, ran both hands over my face. Okay, I told the empty room. Let's say this belongs to something that shares a lot with us. Fine. People write papers about Neanderthal hybrids and ancient genomes all the time. 3, 4. But papers don't walk into your county forest, get strangled with industrial cable, and hoisted into a tree. Not by accident. I pulled my phone out on reflex, then stopped. If I took a photo through the eyepiece, there'd be a record. If there was a record, and someone was still watching, my finger hovered over the camera app. I could almost feel Ruiz's eyes on my shoulders. Curiosity shortens life. I put the phone down. Instead, I reached for an old composition notebook in the drawer, the one I used when the network went down during storms. I sketched what I saw. Crude, yes, but enough. Rough lines for muscle fibers, circles for nuclei, dark ovals for the unknown bodies. I labeled everything. Not for anyone else. For me. So later, when memory softened, I'd have something fixed. My stomach growled. I ignored it. This wasn't hunger. This was the feeling you get right before a bad call comes over the radio. I cleaned up. Slide back into a cardboard sleeve. Sleeve into a plain manila envelope, no labels this time. I tucked it into the lining of my bag. There was a rip near the bottom seam. I'd always meant to sew it. Now it was an improvised hidden pocket. On my way out, I turned off the lights. The morgue went dark. But my thoughts didn't. Number Sheriff Dawson wants a story. The sheriff's office sits above the town like an apology. A low, square building with peeling paint, a faded flag out front, and a lobby that always smells faintly like coffee and old paper. I walked in with my report folder under one arm. My bag strap cut into my shoulder. Behind the front desk, Claire raised an eyebrow. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "Something like that?" I replied. "He in?" "In his cave." She jerked her chin toward the back hallway. "Been on the phone with feds all day. You might want to bring him a peace offering." "I brought the truth," I said. She snorted. "That never goes over well." I knocked once and walked in. Dawson's office was more chaos than cave. Files stacked in teetering columns. A corkboard full of pinned photographs. Maps with circles on them in red marker. He was on the phone. Headset crooked on his thinning hair. "I understand that, but he's my damn coroner. And if you think he saw me," held up a finger. Yeah, I'll tell him. Fine." He stabbed the disconnect button like it had personally insulted him. "FBI?" I asked. "Who else?" He leaned back in his chair. It creaked ominously. "You all right, Danny?" "No," I said. "Good," he grunted. "At least one of us is honest today. Sit." I sat. Dropped the folder on his desk. He eyed it like it might explode. "That the big guy?" "As much of him as I'm allowed to talk about on paper." He flipped it open. Skimmed. Stopped when he hit the word homicide. His jaw worked. "You're sure?" "Yes." "In court, sure?" Or, "This feels wrong, sure?" "Ligature mark doesn't match suicidal hanging patterns. No evidence of self-suspension. Strangulation signs clear. Someone put that cable on him and pulled. 5-6. He snorted. "Hell of a someone." He read a little further. "Unidentified male, approximate height 8 feet. He glanced up. "Really?" "Measure the branch clearance from the trunk once the feds pull their tape," I said. "It's not a bear, Sheriff." "I know it's not a bear," he snapped. Then softer. "I saw it? Remember?" "Right." He had. Briefly. Before Mercer's people swarmed in and politely ushered him topside. "What did they tell you?" I asked. He rubbed his temples. "That it's classified. That it's not a threat to the public. That it's part of an ongoing federal operation. That I should be a good little rural sheriff and not scare my tax base with stories about monsters in trees." He closed the folder, tapped it against the desk. "Then one of them asked me if I was thinking about retirement." The anger under his words was familiar. "I'm guessing you didn't like that," I said. "You guess right." He leaned forward. "All right. Tell me what they did in your lab." "Short version? They used me to make their narrative prettier. Wanted my signature on not suicide without letting me look under the hood." "You think they killed it?" "Yes." The answer came faster than I expected. "You saw enough to know that?" "I saw enough to know it didn't kill itself," I said. "The rest I'm putting together the same way you are." He studied me. "You're spooked." "I watched something that shouldn't exist get treated like routine cargo," I said. "And then I watched it get taken away by people who clearly do that a lot." He drummed his fingers on the folder. "You keep anything?" The question hit hard. My mind flashed to the slide in my bag. The sketch in my notebook. The way Ruiz had looked at me, like she already knew the answer to questions I hadn't heard yet. "No," I said. The lie tasted like old pennies. "Good," he said. "I don't want you on their list more than you already are." "I'm already on a list?" he snorted. "You found the body. You argued with them. You used the H word in your report. You think they're going to frame that as helpful citizen?" I thought about that envelope in my bag. If they were watching everything, then the question wasn't whether I was on a list. It was how far down. Dawson sighed. "Look," he said. "Off the record, I don't like this. I don't like outsiders telling me how to do my job. I don't like black SUVs on my access roads. I don't like being told something that big and that dead in my forest isn't my business." He slid the folder back to me. "But I also like breathing and not having my budget gutted. And not having my deputies reassigned to some back end nowhere because I pissed off the wrong alphabet soup. So what do we do? Officially?" He pointed at the folder. "This is our stance. Suspicious death of an unidentified male. Ongoing federal involvement. No further comment." And unofficially? He gave a thin, humorless smile. "Unofficially, you're going to go home, lock your doors, and seriously consider that for once in your life, you don't need to know how the story ends." The problem was, I already knew myself. "I won't be able to do that," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "Just don't drag me into whatever you do next." I stood. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." "It's not confidence, Danny," he said. "It's surrender. I know I can't stop you, so I'm just asking you not to make me choose between you and my badge." I nodded. On the way out, Claire caught my sleeve. Her voice dropped. "Those FBI folks asked about you," she whispered. "What'd they ask?" "If you're the type to overshare," she said. She rolled her eyes. "I told them you've barely figured out how to share a meme." "Thanks," I said. "Any time. Also," she hesitated. "One of them took a picture of your truck." My scalp tingled. "Did they say why?" She snorted. "They don't say anything. They just look, like their job description is professional staring." My keys felt different. In my hand. When I stepped outside, my old pickup was right where I left it. Same faded blue paint. Same dent in the rear bumper from backing into a dumpster in '09. But now it had layers, memories, license plate, VIN, a digital trail to be scraped by people much more patient than me. I scanned the lot out of instinct. No black SUVs, no dark windows, no obvious watchers, which didn't make me feel better. It made me feel like I'd lost sight of a rattlesnake in tall grass, number, night, and a house that doesn't feel like home. I live alone in a small house on a dead-end street 2 blocks from the high school. 3 rooms, peeling paint on the porch rail, a porch light that only works when you kick it. I'd always liked the quiet. Tonight, it felt like empty stage dressing. I locked the door behind me, then locked the deadbolt, then slid the chain. I'd never done all 3 before. The bag went on the kitchen table. I made coffee I didn't want, just to have something normal to do with my hands. The mug steamed. I didn't drink it. Instead, I pulled out the manila envelope, set it on the table like a live grenade, and stared. The house creaked old wood settling. Normally, I wouldn't notice. Tonight, every sound was an agent on the porch, every passing car a convoy. I forced myself to move, opened the envelope. The slide case slid into my palm. I held it up to the overhead light. The smear caught the glow. A tiny, cloudy streak. You could scrape under your nails 1,000 times in a lifetime and never think twice about what lived there. 7-1. Now I knew better. There was a knock at the door. Not loud. Polite. 3 soft raps. My heart launched itself against my ribs. For a second, I considered pretending I wasn't home. But my truck was in the drive. The light was on. And whoever was out there already knew more about me than my neighbors did. I slipped the slide case into my pocket, walked to the door. Didn't open it. Who is it? Pause. Miss Hall from next door. I closed. My eyes, relief and suspicion, crashed into each other. I peered through the peephole. It was her. Late 60s, gray hair in a loose bun, holding a Tupperware. I undid the chain, opened the door. "Evening," she said. "Looked like your light was on. Thought you might want some lasagna. Made too much." "Thanks, Miss Hall." My voice came out rough. "You all right, Daniel?" "You've asked me that every week for 10 years, I said. She sniffed. "And one of these days you'll tell me the truth." Her eyes crinkled. "Eat." "Not good to go to bed on nothing but coffee." She patted my arm, shuffled back across the lawn. Her porch light flicked on. Normalcy, 10 yards away. The door felt heavier when I closed it this time. Most people's lives are layered like that. Top layer, dinner, neighbors, bills. Underneath, things they never talk about. Tonight, my layers were grinding against each other. I took 2 bites of lasagna, tasted nothing, then shoved it aside. The slide in my pocket felt like it was burning. I needed real lab work. My scope was a toy. DNA analysis, even basic profiling, requires gear my tiny county budget doesn't have. But I knew someone who did. Her name was Erin Cho, State Crime Lab Tech. We'd met 5 years ago on a homicide that didn't belong in a town our size. She was sharp, blunt, and had a bad habit of telling me exactly how many corners we were forced to cut due to budget. We hadn't spoken in 6 months. Not because of a fight, because life has a way of stretching months into, "I'll call later." I stared at my phone. If I called, if I involved her, I'd be pulling her into something the FBI clearly didn't want in the system. But I also knew she could run a blind test. Tissue in, profiles out, no names attached. I told myself I'd sleep on it. I didn't. At 11:43 p.m., I dialed her number. After the 3rd ring, I almost hung up. Then she answered. "Cho. Erin. It's Cole. Daniel." Pause. "Wow. The dead really do rise," she said. "To what do I owe the haunting?" "Got something weird," I said. "In your line of work, that's not specific. Weirder than usual." "Now I'm listening." I picked my words carefully. "Hypothetically," I said, "if someone had a tissue sample from an unidentified decedent and wanted a quiet read on whether it was human, could you do that?" Hypothetically? Yes. "Do you want the official answer or the answer I give someone I still owe a drink?" "The second one." She sighed. "If it's, say, a questionable human sample, I could run a basic STR profile, see if it falls within expected human variants, check for contamination." Quietly. "No name, no case number. But if you're talking about sending me roadkill..." I'm hanging up. It's not roadkill. Good. Because there are forms for that, and they all suck. Can I drive it down? Tonight? Yeah. She hesitated. "Is this going to get me fired?" "It shouldn't," I said, which was not the same as no. Another pause. "Bring it," she said at last. "Back door. I'll be in the lab for another few hours." The call ended. I was committed. Now I grabbed my keys, slid the slide case into a small padded envelope, wrote nothing on the outside, just in case. Before I left, I turned the porch light off. Habit. Halfway to the truck, I realized that might make it look weirder. I turned it back on. Paranoia and common sense were arm wrestling. I backed out of the driveway, headlights off until I hit the corner. Pointless. If anyone was watching, they'd logged the plate hours ago. The road to the state lab is long and dark, an hour on the highway. Pines looming on either side. My brain replayed the day in loops. The cable, the eyes. Mercer's voice. Errors get corrected. I checked my rearview mirror every 30 seconds. Once, I thought I saw headlights trailing at a distance. Then they turned off down a side road. Twice, I almost turned around. But the slide in the envelope on the passenger seat stared at me like an accusation. You stole me, it seemed to say. You don't get to stop halfway. Number. The quiet favor. The State Crime Lab is a rectangle of concrete and glass off an industrial park outside the city. At night, it looks like any other office building that forgot to turn all the lights off. I parked in the side lot, no other cars close by. Wind tugged at my jacket as I walked to the back entrance. I pressed the intercom static. Then Erin's voice. Say the magic word. Overworked, I said. Close enough. I pulled the door open. She met me in the hallway. Lab coat over jeans and a faded "Science is not a liberal conspiracy" t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back, safety glasses perched on top of her head. You look like hell, she said by way of greeting. Long day, I replied. Got something for me? I held up the envelope. It's small, she smirked. That's what they all say. She led me to a side room, not the main DNA suite. This one was smaller. An overflow space with an extra microscope, a refrigerator, and a terminal that probably hadn't seen use in months. Less traffic, she said. Less chance of someone asking why your name popped up in the sample log? I appreciate that. You'll appreciate it more if this turns out to be a raccoon. And I mock you forever. She held out her hand. I hesitated. Once I gave her this, it was out of my control. But that had been true the moment I scraped my nail. I passed her the envelope. She opened it. With a scalpel slid the slide case out, hummed thoughtfully. Nice label. Vague, I approve. What do you need from me? Just to sit there and not hover over my shoulder, she said, and to answer one question honestly. What question? She clicked the slide into a clean holder. Is this tied to any active case number I might accidentally trip over in the system? Yes, I said. But not one you'll see. She snorted. Now I'm curious. Curiosity, I said without thinking, shortens life. She paused, looked at me. Damn, Danny, that's dramatic. You hanging out with poets now? Something like that? She shook her head. Go. Sit. I'll run a quick and dirty look. I can't do full profiling without paperwork, but I can amplify a few loci and see if it's in human range. 1. She moved with casual efficiency. Gloves. Pipettes. Small amounts of liquid in clear tubes. She hummed under her breath. Some old rock song without the lyrics. It was almost comforting. Science has a way of shrinking monsters. Under the right lens, everything is just shape and pattern. We waited while the machine cycled. 20 minutes stretched. She scrolled through something on her phone. I stared at the wall. The hum of equipment filled the silence. At last, the instrument beeped. Okay, she said. Let's see what your mystery goo says. She leaned over the monitor, brown eyes scanning the emerging graph. At first, her expression was bored. Professional. Then her forehead creased. Not a sound I liked from a lab tech. What? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled the chair closer, clicked through a few menus, brought up reference ranges. Talk to me, Erin. She exhaled slowly. All right, she said. Good news first. It's not a raccoon. I never thought it was. Bad news. It's very, very close to human. Close enough that if this was in a database, we'd be having a very different conversation. One different how? She pointed at the screen. You see these peaks? These are STR markers we normally use for human profiling. Most of yours fall right inside normal human variation. A few are off. 1. Off how? Outside expected ranges. Not by a lot, but enough that if I saw this in a normal case, I'd suspect sample contamination or a lab error. Except I didn't mess this up. She leaned back. You didn't tell me this was from a non-standard source. What would you have said if I had? Probably, hell no, and hung up, she said. Her gaze flicked to me. This from one of your weird forest finds? Yeah. You want to tell me what kind of weird? No. She considered that fair. She took her glasses off, rubbed the bridge of her nose. Look, from a purely technical standpoint, if I had to testify, I'd say this is human tissue with anomalies that could be due to mutation, mosaicism, or experimental manipulation. But that's me being careful. 1. Experimental, I repeated. The word echoed all the way back to a creature on an operating table in another man's story. She shrugged. I'm not saying someone cooked this in a lab. I'm saying if they did, I wouldn't be able to prove it from this alone. It's close enough to pass for human at a glance. You'd need deeper sequencing to tease out what's going on. 1. Can you do that? She gave me a look. Not without paperwork, a grant, and a very patient ethics board. I let out a breath. I didn't know I'd been holding. But this part, she continued, tapping the screen. This part I can say. It's not from a pig, or a bear, or some random critter. Whatever you scrape this off of, it's closer to you than to anything else. 8. 1. That's not as comforting as you think. She smirked weakly. Wasn't trying to comfort you. You showed up at midnight with mystery DNA. Comfort left the building an hour ago. She printed a hard copy of the graph, tore it off, handed it to me. No digital copy, she said. You didn't email me. You didn't text me. This never touched the main network. If anyone asks, you were never here. Will anyone ask? I don't know, Danny, she said. But I've been doing this long enough to know when a sample smells like trouble and yours reeks. She hesitated at the door. One more thing. Yeah? If people start asking about this, she said, I'm going to say you pressured me into it and I told you no. That's fine. She looked almost hurt. You're not going to argue? Aaron, I said, if anyone comes for you over this, I want you as far away from me as possible. She studied my face. You're serious. Death in a tree, serious. She opened the door. Then get out of my lab, doctor. Cole, she said softly. And whatever you think you're doing, don't. Her voice cracked. Just enough to make me wish I could. I left graph folded in my pocket. Slide case back in the envelope. The night outside felt colder. The sky pressed lower. Somewhere between the lab and the highway, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Cole. Silence. Then a man's voice. Smooth, calm, familiar. Curiosity, he said. Really does shorten life, doctor. The line clicked dead. No hiss, no beep, just silence. I drove home without remembering the road. The graph in my pocket felt like a confession, the slide like a sin, the body in the tree like a question someone with more guns than I had already decided didn't deserve an answer. And somewhere out there, between my tiny county and whatever facility now held that impossible corpse, were people who already knew the truth. People who'd looked at beings like him so many times that they'd stopped calling them victims, stopped calling them people, and started calling them something else. Assets, errors, containment breaches. Anything except what my fingers had felt in that ligature mark. Murder, not suicide. And now, I was in it. Whether I liked it or not, I didn't sleep. Not that night, not the next one. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Not in the tree, on my table. On Aaron's monitor. In graphs and cells and numbers that whispered, "This is you." And it isn't. By the third night, my hands had started to shake whenever I picked up a pen. By the fourth, I started leaving the TV on with the volume low, just to have someone else's noise drowning out the remembered creak of cable. The call came on day 5, Cole. Doctor, it's dispatch. Sheriff wants you at Ridge Road Trailhead. Now, what is it? Same sector, she said. Her voice was tight. Another situation. My stomach dropped. Another body? Sheriff said, and I quote, "Tell him he's not going to like this," which meant yes, yes, and worse. The drive up felt shorter. Familiarity does that. Same winding road, same trees, leaning in like they wanted to hear. This time, there were more vehicles. Sheriff's truck, 2 patrol cars, a ranger pickup. No black SUVs yet. That just meant we were early. Dawson met me at the tape. Yellow plastic strung across the trailhead like a bandage. He looked older, more gray in his beard than last week. "Before you say anything," he said, "this one's different." "How?" "See for yourself." He led me in. We didn't go to the same ravine. We cut left, then down. 10 minutes of scrambling brought us to a rocky outcrop above a different slope. He pointed. There. The first one had been hung. This one was posed. He was sitting back against a tree, legs splayed out as far as the trunks would allow, head tilted forward slightly as if he'd fallen asleep listening to the wind. From a distance, he could have passed for a massive man in a fur suit. Up close, every illusion died. Different build, shorter, maybe 7 feet, more compact, thicker neck, hair lighter, streaked with gray at the temples, arms resting on his knees, palms open, wrists crisscrossed with old scars. Not cable this time, restraints. His chest was still no rise, no fall, dried blood around the mouth and nose, flies already at work. Someone had placed a length of cable in his lap, like a prop. A bad joke. My mouth went dry. Was he hanging? No, Dawson said. Not when we found him. Rangers say they heard a howl just before dawn. By the time they got to the source, he was like this. No ligature, no rope, no cable, just that. He nodded at the coil in the corpse's lap, like somebody wanted us to think he'd done it himself. I slid down the last few feet. The ground here was disturbed. Dirt scuffed. Bark scraped at shoulder height. The tree behind him had patches where hair had rubbed off onto the trunk. He'd been moved, sat up, arranged, but not by someone his size. The angles were wrong. The dead don't pose themselves. I crouched, close enough to smell him. Not as strong as last time. Less rot, more iron, dried muscle and old sweat. His eyes were closed. Someone had done that much. A kindness or just another part of the picture. His hands told their own story, massive, calloused, knuckles scarred. Under a layer of grimy fur, I saw fresh abrasions. On the palms. On the pads. As if he'd been dragging himself across rough ground. No bruising around the neck, no classic ligature mark. But on the side of his throat, a small puncture. Round. Clean. Like an injection site. Dart? I asked. Ranger thinks so, Dawson said. Found this. He held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside, a metal cylinder. Short, feathered, dented at the tip. Trank dart. Industrial grade. The kind you use on things that can throw a car. I looked back at the body. What do you see? Dawson asked. Not suicide, I said automatically. That's becoming a theme. Need an exam to be sure, I replied. But if you're asking for an early guess, chemical. Overdose? If this was a trank, and they hit him with enough to drop something this big, yeah, overdose. He scratched his jaw. Why not just shoot him? Maybe they couldn't risk bullets. Maybe they needed him intact. Maybe they had orders. The word tasted familiar, orders. Protocol. Any sign of our friends yet? I asked. No feds. He glanced at his watch. Yet. We both knew they were coming. This time, I wasn't going to let them take everything. Let me get him to my table, I said. Fast. Without telling them? Yes? He blew out a breath. That's not playing nice with other agencies, Danny? They're not playing nice with the truth, I said. You saw what they did last time. They'll show up, call it assets and containment, and wipe every trace from the record. At least let me see what he is before they erase him." Dawson looked down at the second giant. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone who'd lost a fight he'd never understood the rules of. "You got a window," he said at last. "Rangers can get a vehicle down to the service road. We'll say we transferred to your custody before they arrived. And when they notice, they'll yell at me," he said. "Again. I'll live." He hesitated. "Will you?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Number the second exam. We moved fast. No fancy gear this time. No black shell. Just a heavy-duty backboard, 4 men grunting and straps straining. It took all of us to shift him. Even dead, he felt more present than most living people. By the time we got him to the truck, my shoulders burned. The drive back down felt like a getaway. I kept expecting black SUVs in the mirror. They didn't appear. Not yet. At the morgue, we backed up to the side door. No one saw us except an orderly having a smoke break. He paled when he caught a glimpse under the sheet. "You didn't see this," Dawson told him. The kid nodded too fast. "Didn't see what?" "Good. He'd do fine." We got him on my table. The sheet came off. Under bright light, the differences between him and the first one sharpened. Different facial structure. Less pronounced brow ridge. Nose closer to human proportions. Ears slightly pointed, but not animal-like. If you squinted and mentally shaved him, you could almost imagine him as some massive, deformed man. Almost. I swallowed. "Same rules as before?" I asked Dawson. "No feds here to tell you otherwise," he said. "Do what you do." I drew a breath that felt too loud. "All right," I said. "Ye incision first." The scalpel fought me skin. Thick, tough, not quite as resistant as the first one, but still wrong. Underneath, muscle like packed cable. Rich red, almost purple. But there were fewer surgical scars, fewer foreign objects. As if, whichever generation he was, belonged to a different phase of the program. Heart enlarged, strong. Lungs darkened in patches, but functional. No massive trauma. No bullet wounds. Nothing obvious to explain death. Until I reached the neck from the inside at the base of the skull near the brainstem, I found it. A small device. Embedded deep, size of a thumb, wires branching outward, merging with nerve tissue. "I felt my hands go cold, Dawson," I said quietly. "Come here." He stepped closer. His face went pale. "What the hell is that?" "Control implant," I said. The words came without thought, like I'd borrowed them from someone else. Small scars, old injection marks, the way he was posed, like a kill switch, I added. Staring at it felt like staring at a snake coiled around his spine. "Can you remove it?" I hesitated last time. In someone else's story, removing the device had been the mistake that killed a man engineered into a monster. I wasn't in that OR, but I'd read enough between the lines to know how that had played out. "One. Carefully," I said. "With photos." I took pictures. Not on my phone. On the old morgue camera that still saves to a local drive, we back up manually once a week. If they wanted those, they'd have to come ask. I documented everything: position, attachment points, tissue reactions. Then I cut, slow, delicate, separating the interface nodules from the nerves as gently as possible. The device came free with a faint, wet sound. I held it up under the light. It gleamed. No labels, no manufacturer's mark, just smooth metal and organic residue. "Looks like something out of a sci-fi flick," Dawson muttered. "If sci-fi was cheap and mean." I set it in a steel dish. It sat there, inert, ugly. I half expected it to start smoking. It didn't, just existed, weightless and heavy at the same time. "Could this kill him remotely?" Dawson asked. Yes, I said. If they cut the signal or flooded it or whatever this thing is meant to do, yeah. Drop him instantly. No struggle. No bullet holes to explain. Maybe they wanted him down before they flipped the switch, I said. Maybe he ran. The image hit me. A creature like this crashing through trees in the pre-dawn light, darts hitting his back, poison burning his veins, control chip humming at his brainstem, waiting for the order. He breaks contact, escapes the perimeter, gets far enough that the signal goes fuzzy. They can't pull him back. Can't risk him being seen, being found, being times understood. Asterisk. So they do the next best thing. Kill, stage, explain away. He wasn't suicidal, I said, even if he understood what that cable meant, even if they gave it to him. This isn't what suicide looks like. This is a cleanup that didn't go to plan. You can say that in a report? I can say it wasn't self-inflicted, I replied. The rest I'll have to choose my words on. Dawson rubbed his face. They're going to take him too, aren't they? Yes. And that. He nodded at the device. If we let them. We looked at each other. A silent argument played out between us. Law versus truth. Safety versus curiosity. They already know you moved this one, you know, I said. He grunted. Probably. Why? Because if they've got satellites and trackers and whatever else monitoring their assets, they know when one drops off and where. 1. You think we're on a clock? Yes. He sighed. Then you better decide fast what you're keeping. I stared at the device. Every instinct screamed to throw it in a furnace. Every other instinct screamed louder. You don't get many chances to hold proof in your hand. Proof that the world isn't what they say it is. Proof that things like him weren't accidents. They were made, used, discarded, staged as suicides in forests. No one audits. I picked up a smaller dish, dropped the implant in, splashed it with formalin. Not ideal, but better than nothing. Then I did something I knew I'd regret either way. I labeled it wrong. Not implant. Not evidence. Just a bland code that could pass for a sample from an old case. M. Ridge. 9/3 N2. An extra number. An old date. A lie to hide a truth. I sealed it. Put it with the rest of the organ jars. If someone went looking, they'd find it. If they didn't know what to look for, it was just another piece of medical waste in a room full of it. Footsteps in the hall cut short. The next decision sharp, purposeful, multiple pairs. Dawson and I locked eyes. Too late now, he muttered. The door opened without a knock. Mercer. Ruiz. 2 others. No pretense this time. No polite introductions. They moved like people entering a crime scene they already owned. You moved him fast, Mercer said. His gaze flicked to the open chest cavity, the exposed spine, my bloody gloves. Almost like you expected us. Almost like I did my job, I replied. Cause of death? Chemical asphyxia, likely secondary to central nervous system failure, I said evenly. No mechanical trauma, no suicide attempt, no self-inflicted anything. You're sure? Yes. He looked tired, more than last time, less angry, more resigned. Of course you are, he said. He looked past me at the body, at the unnatural size framed by human-sized equipment. I told them it was a mistake, bringing you in on the first one, he said quietly. They like to pretend rural professionals don't notice patterns. Ruiz moved to the table's side. Her gaze scanned the open neck area, the absence of metal. Where is it? She asked. I played dumb. Where is what? She stepped closer. Doctor, she said. Her tone was soft. You are very good at your job. Good enough to find something most people would never see. Good enough to know exactly what it is when you see it. Her eyes didn't leave mine. Where is it? The room felt too bright. Dawson shifted beside me. "Agent," he said, "we're still in my county facility. You want to bark orders? You can do it in a tone that doesn't sound like you're about to arrest my coroner." She didn't look at him. "This isn't about your title, Sheriff," she said. "It's about containment." Mercer raised a hand. "Enough," he said. "To her. To me. To the world." He turned back to me. "You removed the implant," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "Why?" "Because it was there," I said, "and because I wanted to see what was killing them." His expression twitched. For the first time, I saw a crack in the calm. "You think the chip kills them?" "I think the people holding the remote do," I replied. His jaw worked. "There is no remote," he said. "Not the way you picture it. No big red button. No cackling villain. Just protocols and systems and fail-safes built over decades by people who were terrified of something you haven't even seen yet." "One?" He stepped closer. "Put it back." I actually laughed. "You're joking." "I'm not," he said. "It needs to be in him when we move the body." "What difference does that make?" "To you? None," he said. "To us? Paper trails, audit logs, things you don't want to care about. So I'm asking you one last time to stop making this harder." I thought about the jar on the shelf, about the label that lied, about the graphs in my pocket, about the dart hole in this one's neck and the cable bite in the last. "I can't," I said. 3 words. No going back. Mercer closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, then opened them. "Then this is where our cooperation ends," he said. He turned to Dawson. "Sheriff, from this point forward, Dr. Cole is no longer cleared to participate in these investigations. He will not be informed of future recoveries. He will not be brought to scenes. You will find another coroner to sign what we put in front of you." "That's not how jurisdictional agreements can be rewritten," he said. "We've done it before. 2, 3. He looked back at me. His voice dropped. "But that doesn't solve the problem we already have, does it?" Ruiz took a step forward. "There's a jar on that shelf that doesn't belong," she said. "Somewhere between the gallbladders and the aneurysms. We can do this the easy way, where you hand it over and keep your license, or we can do it the hard way, where your building has a small electrical fire tonight and all of this goes away." Images flashed. Cabin. Fire. Gunshots above a root cellar. Things from a different story rhyming with my own. My hands curled into fists inside the gloves. "You're threatening a county facility," I said. "No," Mercer said. "We're promising an outcome," he sighed. "Look, you think we like this? We don't. Some of us signed up to chase bank fraud and drug runners. We ended up here instead." He nodded. "At the body. Cleaning up the pieces of a program no one wants to admit exists. If it were up to me, I'd let you keep your trophy. Put it in a museum. Let the world gawk. Maybe then we'd get real oversight." He shook his head. "But it's not up to me. And it's definitely not up to you." Silence pressed. On the room, I thought about resisting, about telling them to get a warrant, about hiding the jar somewhere. They'd never find it, but they already knew it existed. And I'd seen enough to suspect their reach went far beyond my shelves. Slowly, I walked to the wall, scanned the row. My fingers found the mislabeled jar. I held it for a second longer than I should have, then handed it to Mercer. He took it gently. "As a professional," he said, "this is the right choice. As a human being, I'm sorry." Ruiz took it from him. Her eyes said she wasn't. "We'll take custody of the body now," she said. "Sheriff, we'll send a sanitized copy of our report for your files. Cause of death: cardiac arrest, following sedation. Manner: undetermined. No mention of suicide." "How generous," Dawson muttered. They zipped him up. Another black shell. Another heavy set of wheels rolling out of my life. When they were gone, the morgue felt hollow, like the room itself knew something important had been removed, like it would echo differently forever. Dawson leaned against the wall. "You all right?" "No," I said. "Good," he replied. "At least you're consistent." He rubbed his face. "You still have that first slide?" His eyes were on mine, too sharp, too knowing. "I told you I—" He held up a hand. "Don't lie to me, Danny. Lie to them, if you have to. Not to me." I exhaled. "Yes," I said, "in a safer place than here." "Good." He straightened. "Because whatever this is," he nodded toward the empty table, "it's not stopping. And next time they find one of these things in my forest, they're sure as hell not calling us first." He left. I was alone. Again me. Steel. Bleach. And a feeling I couldn't shake. The first one had died on someone's table. The second one died trying to leave the story they'd written for him. Both had been erased, staged, explained. And now there was one little piece of truth hiding where even I wasn't sure it would stay safe. A slide. A graph. A story about a Bigfoot that didn't hang himself. And FBI agents who needed the world to believe he had. Days blurred work came and went. Heart attacks, car wrecks, overdoses that were actually overdoses. People whose deaths made sense. I wrote reports. Signed forms. Talked to grieving families who looked at me like I held some secret about their loved ones' last moments. I didn't. Not for them. The secret I actually held would never go on any certificate. It lived in a slide hidden behind a loose board in my closet, and in a printout in the back of my tax folder. If anyone ever broke in looking for it, they'd have to wade through receipts first. That was the joke I told myself to make it feel less like a ticking bomb. The FBI didn't come back, not officially. No more black SUVs I could see. No agents in my lobby. No calls. Just the sense of eyes on the back of my neck whenever I stepped into the forest, even on completely normal calls. Dawson stopped mentioning the ridge. We both pretended it had gone quiet, that no more 8-foot errors had slipped their leash in our county. I knew better. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means whatever is happening where you can't see it. The first sign came from somewhere stupid Facebook. Claire shoved her phone at me one slow afternoon. "Look," she said. "Your boyfriend made the internet." On the screen was a grainy photo, taken from far away. A dark shape in the trees, barely visible between trunks. Caption: "Found this near Merrow Ridge. Looks like someone hung a big stuffed gorilla up there, lol." Hundreds of comments, most laughing, some insisting it was fake. A few arguing in earnest about Bigfoot and government cover-ups. 4, 5, 6. My heart stuttered. "That's not one of mine," I said. "Yours?" Claire scoffed. "Jesus, Doc, listen to yourself." "Where was this posted?" "In a local hiking group," she said. "Yesterday. User's anonymous, but his other posts are all from around here." "Sheriff, see this yet?" "Don't show him," I said. "Yet?" She squinted at me. "You okay?" "No." "That's becoming your brand." I spent the rest of the afternoon refreshing that thread. By evening, the post was gone. No explanation. No "removed for violating guidelines." Just gone. Like it had never existed. Except I'd seen it. And so had a few hundred others. Some things are easier to erase than others. A post, a body, a witness. But patterns? Patterns are harder. That night, the forest was on the news. Not ours. Someone else's. A talking head's voice drifted from my TV while I tried to pretend leftover lasagna counted as dinner. Authorities are investigating the discovery of what appears to be an animal carcass posed in a tree in a national forest in Oregon. Officials say foul play is not suspected and that the scene may be the result of a prank or hunting activity gone wrong. The footage showed a distant shape. Big, dark, Too big to be anything that should be dismissed as a prank. They cut away. Fast I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth. 2 scenes, 2 forests, same script. Not suicide. Not homicide. Not our problem. 2, 3, 7. I put the fork down, went to the closet. The board came away with a familiar squeak. The slide was still there. The graph. The notebook with my ugly little drawings. I sat on the floor under the hanging shirts, like I was hiding from a storm. If this is happening in other forests, I said quietly, then there are other doctors, other coroners, other cops being told the same lies. And if any of them pushed the way I had, what happened to them? The phone buzzed. For a second, I thought it was another unknown number, another calm voice reminding me that curiosity has teeth. Instead, it was a text from Aaron. Aaron, you still alive? I almost laughed. Emmy. Define alive, Aaron. No guys in suits? Me. Not yet, Aaron. Good pause. Aaron. You, watching the news? Me. Yeah. Aaron? You still think your sample is a one-off? No. I didn't. Me. No, Aaron. Then maybe you should meet someone. 3 dots blinked. Stop. Start. Stop. Aaron. She used to work for them. The words hit like cold water. Me. Them. Who, Aaron? The ones who make the rules you keep trying to break. Me. Why me, Aaron? Because I'm not stupid enough to poke that bear myself, and because she asked for someone exactly like you. Me. Great. I love being a type. Aaron. You coming to the city this week? Me? If I say no? Aaron. She'll find you anyway, so make it easy on yourself. The meeting was set. For Thursday, an address downtown. Not the lab. A coffee shop 2 blocks from the courthouse, the kind of place that tries too hard with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood. I was there 30 minutes early. Paranoia does that. I picked a corner table with a view of the door and the street. Ordered a coffee I didn't want. Pretended to read something on my phone. People came and went, students, office workers. A man in a suit arguing quietly into his AirPods. None of them were the person who had once worked for them. Until she was. She walked in like she owned the floor under her feet. Late 30s. Maybe. Dark hair cut blunt at her shoulders. Suit jacket over a black t-shirt. No badge. No gun. Just a presence like someone who has spent too long in rooms where other people are afraid to breathe wrong. She scanned the space once. Her gaze landed on me. She came over. Dr. Cole? Her voice was lower than I expected. Calm. Measured. Yes, she sat without asking. Aaron says you're stubborn. I prefer principled. She says you're not going to let this go. She's right. Then this is a waste of my time, she said. Because the best thing I could do for you is convince you to forget what you saw. Too late, I said. She studied me up close. I could see the faint scar under her jawline. Clean. Surgical. Like something had gone in or out through there once. You're not what I expected, she said. Likewise. You thought I'd be a man in a suit, or a spook in a trench coat. She almost smiled. Those exist, she said. I'm the ghost of a different machine. She offered her hand. Lila Monroe. The name landed strange. Have we met? Not yet, she said. But we've been in the same story. My skin prickled. Aaron said you used to work for them, I said. What were you? Geneticist, she said. Later, data analyst. Later still, a problem they needed to erase. She sipped the coffee. The waiter had quietly sat down. Let's talk about your Bigfoot. The word wasn't a joke coming from her. You know about him? I know about all of them, she said. At least all the ones they didn't manage to wipe from the logs before I walked out. You were inside the program. Yes. She watched my face carefully. Do you believe in Bigfoot, Dr. Cole? I believe I stood under something 8 feet tall hanging from a tree and cut another one open in my lab, I said. If you want to call them Bigfoot, fine. It's a word. It's as good as any other, until someone gives me a better one. 4. She nodded. Fair. For what it's worth, they don't call them that. Internally, they're assets. Sometimes field units. Sometimes just numbers. 1, 6, numbers. Easier to decommission a number than a name, she said. My jaw tightened. Decommission. Is that what you call strangling one and drugging another to death? She didn't flinch. I didn't call for those orders, she said, but I designed parts of the system that made them necessary. So I'm not here to defend anything they did. I'm here to explain why they'll keep doing it and why you're in danger the longer you poke around. Then explain. She took a breath. You already know they're close to human, she said. Your lab friend showed you the STR anomalies, enough for you to suspect hybridization. Yes. You're wrong about one thing, she said. They didn't start as Bigfoot. They started as people. The cafe noise faded, like someone had turned the room down and left only us. Volunteers at first, she continued. Soldiers mostly, survival trials, endurance projects. What if we could engineer operators that could move through terrain the way animals do? See in low light, smell better, fight harder, survive injuries that would kill a normal human. That was the sales pitch. 1, 6, and they bought it. Of course they did, she said. Cold War never really ended. It just got more creative. She leaned back. Then the volunteers started dying. Or worse, not dying, but changing in ways that made them unsuitable for reintroduction into society. So they were relocated. To forests. To the edges of places no one audits, she said. National parks, deep reserves, remote ranges, all under the guise of long-term observation. What were you observing? At first? How well they survived, how they interacted with each other, whether the enhancements held up over time. And later, her eyes darkened. Whether they made good anchors, she said. Anchors for what? She hesitated. This is the part you weren't supposed to see, she said softly. The part my department only whispered about. There are things happening under certain forests that make human thought go sideways. Whole ecosystems going neurologically dark, people walking into the woods and not coming back. Not because something ate them, but because something repurposed them. I thought of the silence on Merrill Ridge, the way the birds had vanished, the smell like metal and ozone. Whatever's under those places, she said, doesn't move like an animal. It spreads like a frequency, a pattern, a song you can't stop hearing once you've heard it. 1. And the assets? She met my eyes. We wrapped that song in bodies that could stand it longer than we could, she said. Sent them in as buffers, dampeners, living radiation shields. It worked. Kind of. 1. Kind of. They slowed things down, bought time. But the ones who came back? She shook her head. They weren't just hybrids anymore. Their nervous systems had been rewritten twice. Once by us. Once by whatever they were standing next to. 1. And when you can't control something that's been engineered and then rewritten by an unknown signal, you install a fail-safe, she said. Implants, neural locks, kill switches. You give yourself the power to turn them off if they start to slip. 1. Like the one in the second one's neck. Exactly like that. So why the staging? I asked. Why hang them? Why pose them with cable? Why not just bury them in some black site furnace and be done with it? She stirred her coffee. Because they're not the only ones being managed, she said. You are too, I frowned. What does that mean? You think they staged those scenes for you? She said. They didn't. They staged them for the ones still out there. I went still. The others, she said. The ones still running your forests at night. The ones still listening to the wrong frequency. When one of their own goes rogue or breaks down, the others know. They sense it. The network shifts. If we just made them vanish, it destabilized them. They searched. They howled. They broke containment. One. So you give them a story, I said slowly. Yes. A story they can understand, she said. They guy who couldn't handle it anymore. The one who took his own life. The one who hung himself or lay down and didn't get back up. It's ugly, but it's familiar, even to them. And you make sure we see the same story, I said. A hiker posts a blurry photo. Locals gossip. The media does a 40-second segment about Bigfoot on the loose, and some ranger shrugs on camera. She nodded. Ridicule is a powerful tool, she said. It keeps most people from looking too closely. Those who do see too much, we pay them a visit, offer them a generous NDA, or a friendly warning, or we don't have that conversation at all because they fall off a cliff or wrap their car around a tree at 3 a.m. You're saying the suicide wasn't for us? I said. It was for them. Yes. And the FBI told me it wasn't suicide because they couldn't risk me buying the same story. Because once you start believing what they believe, she said, you're not an investigator anymore. You're part of the system. And they can't afford that. They need you doubting. They need you unsettled. They need you on the fence. So, I don't pick a side, I said. Exactly. I sat back, let it wash over me Bigfoot as failed soldier, as walking dampener, as sacrificial buffer against something under the soil that didn't care about bodies or badges. FBI, not as sole villain, but as janitors in a building whose foundations were rotting. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because Aaron asked? Because you still have a piece of one of them? She said. And you still think you can fix this with a good autopsy report? Can't I? No. She didn't sugarcoat. This program is older than you, she said. Older than me. It has black budgets, classified branches, and contingency plans that end with people like you in unmarked graves if you push too hard. Then what am I supposed to do? Decide what story you're willing to live in, she said. You can let them keep hanging your monsters and calling them suicides while you quietly log the details that don't fit. Maybe one day, when enough files stack up, someone with more reach than you or me will use them. And in the meantime? She looked out the window. Things under the forests keep waking up. And if I don't play along? She met my eyes again. Then they correct the error, she said, the same way they corrected him. We sat in silence. Outside, a bus rumbled past. A kid laughed. Somewhere, someone spilled their drink and swore. Inside, the world had just shifted sideways again. Why did you walk away? I asked. She looked tired. Because I met one, she said. Not on a table, not hanging in a tree, in a corridor between labs, bleeding from a dozen places. He looked at me like he knew me, like he remembered me, like he was asking me something I couldn't hear. And then? They killed him? No, she said. They tried. The switch didn't work. Whatever was under those forests had already rewritten too much. He died 4 hours later on his own, screaming in a language we didn't have a key for. She finished her coffee. I decided then that I'd rather take my chances outside the fence, she said. With the rest of the livestock, she stood. Burn the slide, she said. Forget the graph. Live long enough to vote in a few more elections and annoy your neighbor with your porch light decisions. And if I can't, she hesitated, then at least stop doing this alone, she said. There are others. People like me. People like you. Sharing notes very carefully. Like a support group for people who've met Bigfoot. Like a support group for people who've met the people who build Bigfoot, she said. She slid a card across the table, no name, no agency, just a handwritten address and a date. Come if you want, she said. Or don't. Either way, stop standing under trees waiting for bodies to fall. She left. I sat there a long time, card in my hand, coffee cold, forest in my head. The FBI had been right about one thing. This wasn't suicide. Not for him. Not for me. Whatever story I picked from here on out, it was going to feel like a slow kind of self-destruction either way.